Well,
All right. Well, I want to start by saying, KEEGOZ, why are there no updates? Why are you so slow? What the fuck is going on?
Are you telling me
Hurry up.
the project update that took 1 year wasn't enough for you, or
No, it wasn't. No, I demand
that
answers.
I had to split that was split into two parts?
Yeah, don't you code everything yourself? Why are you taking so long?
I hate coding actually.
Yeah. That's why you don't do it.
That is correct. That is why I don't do it. I actually do not like coding.
well, I guess that should be the first question. What's the actual state of the programming in the game? Like who's actually coding for the game? What's the actual capacity we're working with
Uh,
here?
I would say so. Limmy is definitely the one coding the bulk of things at the moment. I the game breaks a lot, so that's obviously a big problem. And as to why things are quite slow is that obviously if something breaks, then their priority is to fix the game over actually updating it. So every time the game breaks, is another delay for us. So I don't actually see how many times the game breaks, but from what I'm told, it's quite a bit.
So what you're saying is they're like bogged down, having to constantly like fucking fix the code instead of having time to work on implementing the updates.
Yeah, and obviously, I think Putin is quite busy at the moment with obviously their actual job. They both have actual jobs as well, so if their real life gets busy, then effectively nothing will be coded.
Yeah, and they're like unpaid interns.
I don't know if they're unpaid. I don't know
All
actually.
right,
I'm
poorly paid
unpaid, so
indentured servants.
I don't get
Yeah,
paid for my shit.
yeah, but see,
So
but you teach, so you're used to it.
that's true.
So I don't know why I'm
Oh
latching onto
god.
that. I just gotta... All right. Well, yeah. Well, I think the main concern everybody has all the time is that not enough is being done, and the changes are being coded so slow, and there's like this air of like people don't even try to suggest shit anymore because they're just thinking, well, this shit's never gonna get fucking coded anyway, right? And I
The
think,
the big problem. Sorry.
yeah, and I
The big
think,
problem with like the suggestions is that they don't really think about the coding implications when they
Yeah.
suggest it either.
yeah,
So I try to respond every now and then to the people that do pop stuff up there, but yeah, it's hard because obviously they put up quite ambitious things, and it's not there's no real thought towards balance. There's no real specifics of how it actually be done. And obviously, yeah, I look at it, I'm like, this to me looks like it wouldn't be easy to code. Now, obviously, I don't code, so sometimes I might be wrong, but I generally do ask the coders about how hard something is to code before then rolling with it. So, but yeah, given how slow things are and how long it takes to get things changed, also just putting in unbalanced shit is probably not going to be ideal either because it might take a decent chunk of time to rebalance it. So all those things. I know Spires came up recently, and yeah, well that's obviously a can of worms on its own. But there is
yes,
the people do post stuff in there, but yeah, there is a massive lag time between what I'd actually be able to action based on what they suggest. By the time we'd even get close to even announcing it, let alone code it. So
do you think there's too much focus on like everyone focusing on MA changes and like
yeah,
that
the
being
bulk of
like
changes are MA related. The two well, there's three things that I generally hear. One is spies. Two is the fact that we should have more units in the game, and three is perks. Uh, I'm going to
Yeah.
repeat once again. Perks are never coming out, so stop
Fuck
asking.
perks. Fuck perks.
The,
They were
the
terrible.
the coding
yeah.
is a nightmare. The balancing is a nightmare. And yeah, I just don't. I think once people realize what it actually is, which was basically you click a button, you wait for like 2 months to then click another button, and people would have just gamed like a tree to work out which one's the best one. So I don't. I think at the end of the day, for the amount of time, and it would probably take over a year to do this, it's not worth the time investment. You could probably get a lot more updates if we didn't have perks, which is what I've gone with.
Yes, so let's talk about this one. I mean, you posted in November the military changes update.
I
I have it on.
did, and recently I consolidated all the changes into one thread, which is actually the same document that the coders also have. So if you want to look at all the changes, it is all in one place on the forums now as well. Because
I'll
it kind
drop
of,
a link in
yeah,
the
it
chat.
kind of
I was right about
obviously,
to.
it went, it was kind of spread across like multiple threads. So I thought I'd just consolidate it because some people were asking, oh, where was this change like talked about? So yeah, it's all in one big thread now. That's the same thread that the coding team has. So you have the exact same info that they'll be working from.
So when do you think they'll be able to finish it? Like, how long will it take?
So I believe Lemmy said that they would start on the ship changes probably within the next week or so. They might have even started by this point. How long it will take, I don't know. Look, my ideal scenario is that everything gets coded, everything goes into the test server, which will be reset. We do a tournament for however long. Assuming one, it's balanced enough, and two, it doesn't break, then ideally it would be shifted into the game pretty quick after that. But that's an ideal scenario. The way I suspect it will go is that probably we will have ships go in first before the military research. So we'll probably do something similar to what we did with projects, where you get two sort of updates at two different times. But yeah, it really depends. But obviously, there's a lot of stuff that is announced here that is subject to change based on what the feedback is on the test server. So could be quick, could be not. I'll probably always lean towards it will probably take between 6 and 8 months, and anything less is just a bonus at this point.
So beginning of 2026 is what you're saying.
I'm really hoping it's fully out in 2025. Ideally, I would like to start on the next econ update and be able to announce that at the back end of 2025. So
Well, hopefully that you've mashed all the MA changes into one. People will stop fucking suggesting MA changes, and we can move on to actually fixing shit. Because
I doubt it because there's a lot of things. Look. If we just went with Milcom updates, we could probably have like a huge update. But yeah, obviously then that's ignoring econ for probably like 18 months or something insane. So.
Whoa. I don't even know. I mean, indirectly, yeah, econ and MA make sense as the focus, but I think the biggest issue right now that needs to be fixed is just the engagement in the game in general, the retention problems that we're having, and people feeling like there isn't anything to do past a certain point. We need things that are going to make people log into the actual game. Right now, people just log into Discord, and then maybe they'll log into the game to stay active, but there's not a lot to really do in the game.
To be fair, I'd argue that most of the things in like for people to do and people interacting with the game has always not actually been in the game itself.
I agree, yeah, but I think it's becoming a bigger problem because raiding is one of the things that people are doing in the game. It's become more active in the low tier, so now you have like a bunch of people dropping off from raiding.
Probably. I do think the game, well, yeah, the game's gone through a lot of changes, obviously, from when it begun. There's a few issues that I don't think the game has really adapted to. One of the big ones is that there is no central space now for people to talk. Obviously, for a long time, the forums was the central place. It was the thing that would
Right, yeah.
generate discussion. It was the thing that, people, FAs would, basically live or die by the way that they would post on the forums. That has more or less died at this point.
Yeah, and the
Discord doesn't really
community is
replicate
fractured.
that as well. We obviously had Ron there for a while, which was the go-to central place, but that's also died a death now as well, and I do think we, for whatever reason, we really lack a lot of big personalities around the game to drive a lot of engagement between the politics of the game, which I don't know if that's because of the fact the forums and there's no central space has died, or whether people are just less engaged with the game.
I think it's all connected. I think the mechanics inform the politics, and then the politics informs the community, and then the community informs the retention. I think it's all connected in that sense.
Well, the
I think
big
I'm
one.
using a lot.
Oh,
sorry.
I think the big thing is what's happening, and part of the reason where like MA is usually the main topic of conversation, and why we don't see like new econ IA people coming up. You see a bunch of like MA talent, is that like the rating meta like starves the game of new talent, because the only people that survive are people that enjoy rating and can fit into that meta. Everyone else gets kicked or just fucking loses interest and stops playing the game. So we're sort of in a drought of people that are interested in like farming in those aspects of the game. And so these raiders, they have these big periods where they have a lot of fun, they're raiding, they're growing up, and then they all burn out and quit and stop being interested in the game. There's not enough people that like diplomacy, farming, more of the passive aspects of the game.
To respond to what Borg said, though, you're right. There's more active micropolitics happening, but those are graveyards. Like the retention there isn't any better than it is in the macro space. I'd say it's worse. So I don't know that's necessarily a point in favor of things, really.
Yeah. Well, the game has a deeper problem in how it brands itself. It's like a nation simulation game, but in reality, it really isn't. What it should be is it's an alliance simulation game. You can't do anything by yourself.
Yeah.
It's all a fucking team game. Even if you're like playing with a small group of friends, you're still playing with that small group of friends. Like even if you're in a small rating alliance, you're still playing with other people. You can't play by yourself. So it's like, I don't know. It's these new players shouldn't even be allowed to, like, if you're a C1, you shouldn't be able to make an alliance. Well, I don't understand why that's a mechanic. You should have to join an established alliance, get some experience, and then make a new alliance, because that'll increase your retention like infinitely. Like you have a way bigger chance of playing the game if you join like Rose than if you join some fucking 150th alliance fucking called, I don't know, United NATO Nations or some shit.
The Orbis Communist Knights.
Yeah. USSR.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's right. I guess the question I have is, what can be done to fix this stuff? Accepting the reality that the forums are never going to come back, which I think is probably true.
That's a reality. I mean, even the people that call for it don't seem to even.
Yeah, Roberts is always
it.
going on about reviving the forums, and then I see him in Ron all the time talking in debate floor instead.
I actually I think the forums aren't like dead. I think we see decent amount of activity during wars. The last couple of war threads have been fairly healthy, although partially because of us. So I don't know how it would go without us, but they might. I think they're just going to be relegated to that is where all the war stuff happens, and that will be it, rather than a day-to-day politics. So yeah, I don't know. In terms of retention, I do think we need more community events and stuff. Obviously the big thing recently that spiked, I think, just even general members' attention was the ARG vote. Like we saw insane amount of people going and voting on the forums. That is probably the most active the forum has ever been that hasn't involved a war in probably ages now. So I do think that we do need more community events, or whether the game needs to inbuild some sort of system that generates a similar amount of discussion.
Yeah, like a voting, like in actual built-in politics into the game, rather than it all being like meta-based.
Yeah, which would be a pretty significant shift for the game because the game's always tried to not do that and allow that to be a player-driven thing. But it potentially now, given it's not being player-driven quite as much, the game might actually have to have some sort of community voting system. Whether that be to get a positive effect or a negative effect, I don't know. This it's obviously going to need a bit of brainstorming between now and whenever the sort of next update probably gets rolled out. But I do think there needs to be something that the average player can actually engage in and have an effect on, just
One
to
of the
get
other
some sort of engagement.
one of the other things that has been thrown out as an idea in the past that I also think is a good idea, but I also think would be a very difficult idea to implement was like PVE rating or like something along that line where people don't necessarily have to target other people, because the issue is once you get to a certain point, the raid targets dry up, right? There's no
Yeah.
rating past a certain point.
So there's always been
Realistically,
like some suggestions that we get, like obviously non-player nations into the game so people can do like some sort of raid challenge. How that would work, whether we could actually feasibly code that, I don't know. How fun it would be, don't know.
It's very fun.
Obviously,
That's
obviously, I try to wade into the raiding sort of discussion when I started up these Milcom changes, and I was pretty thoroughly told to butt out. So
yeah.
that's a bit of an issue. The real, and I will say that the real big issue I find with the people who do raid is that they don't care what the change is. It is that there should be no change whatsoever. So that's obviously going to make it a difficult challenge. Even if the change was potentially in their benefit, I could still see them saying no. So that's going to be an
Well,
issue. I
we've
might
seen
have to
that.
force a
We've seen
change
that
through
example. Yeah, yeah. Although in this
against
case,
their will, but
like
I
in
don't
this
know.
case, I don't know if it would necessarily be like it wouldn't necessarily be conflicting with rating, adding PVE or some sort of PVE mechanic.
Potentially, I mean, that's another way to go about it is to, I mean, you could always code in an alternative and then once people are happy with the alternative, potentially scale back the like normal thing and keep replacing it. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how that is going to resolve itself. I mean, to be honest, if we're looking at that for the next Milcom update, that means we're probably looking at tackling raiding and spies in the one update. Which is going to be fun to deal with the
just not
community
gonna
because
fucking happen. Yeah, I think
they're
that's
they're
gonna.
the two groups of people that are incredibly hard to get any changes through. No one wants changes to spies really, or at least not the ones with invested interests, and no one wants changes to rating either. Even though I think both of those are sorely they sorely need some sort of update to them. Spies
I will
spies
say
seem useless to me personally now.
I agree. I mean, my opinion on spies is it's they're not very good, but I don't know if they're necessarily the priority, just because they're not an active detriment to the game. I don't think. I think they're a lot
I
better focuses perhaps than
I
spies.
I don't know. I don't know if you need to do massive change to them though. I think that there's just a few key issues. One, you can't get back into the spy game. Two, I
Yeah,
feel
I
like
would
you need to
increase
pretty much
the
have
rebuy.
someone at. You kind of need to keep. The problem is if you don't have someone at 0, the odds on the spies just become rubbish. So I think there needs to be a bit of a balance on the percentages and how that's calculated because to me, if you have someone like double someone's spies, you should have at least 50% chance to I don't know, spy them. Whether the current meta is you basically need to get them down to like below 10 to actually have an effective odd at actually spying anything. So but yeah, I do agree. I think you need to be able to get back up. I do like the idea of beige protecting spies as well, but as I said, I think you have to change the percentages on them. Otherwise, winning the spy war is going to be effectively useless because all you'll be doing in war is just spying other people's spies and maybe occasionally then spying a unit, which obviously spying units is the benefit. So if you make rebuy too broken, then there is absolutely no benefit of winning a spy war at all, because all you're going to be doing is spying spies all the time.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there needs to be a massive change, but I think the way it's calculated needs to be redone.
Yeah, I certainly agree. I mean, personally, I think the whole mechanic is kind of just busted, and some people enjoy it, but it doesn't feel like it's very important.
Well, the only people that enjoy it are people with like vested interests that have been farming spies for like 7 years, and then if you make actual changes and shit, then their achievements fucking mean nothing anymore, and they can't fucking brag about it.
I mean, it's definitely annoying if you've won a war and you're just sitting there not doing much, especially as a whale, and your spies, your tanks just keep getting spied over and over. But
It's not even
yeah,
Rose Baldwin. It's like 4 people. It's like Aki, DTC, and like 2 other people.
Yeah,
most of whom aren't in Rose anymore. So
Yeah.
that's true. It's more Oblivion than Rose.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't think anybody
yeah.
else gives a fuck about the system. I think everyone else would just fucking change it, and I don't think you would get any opposition to it at all.
Yeah, I feel like I'll be honest. With my opinion of spies is the whole system, the whole way it works is dumb, and it should just be thrown out and remade from scratch. But obviously, that's not only controversial but difficult, given and which kind of falls into my actual opinion, which is it's not worth focusing on when they're. I
I
don't
do
know.
think that a small change the way it's calculated, I think, is the easiest way to just sort of
Probably, yeah.
tidy it up a bit. I do think the beige change is good as well. I did even consider putting it with the beige changes that we had already announced, but I just think it is just going to break the system a little bit too much that currently
I think
exists.
increasing the rebuy is definitely something that should happen, because right now it's what, like with the projects, it's 3 spies a day. So it takes 20 days every day
Yes.
to restore
Yeah,
your
it's
spies. It's like a
ridiculous.
whole war.
And people can feasibly just keep you at 0 spies forever, and you can do
Right, yeah.
nothing about that. So, yeah, I do agree. I think I think beige protection to spying spies is a good idea. But yeah, we probably just need to just sit down and think about some of the things that it might break if we up the rebuy too much. It could even be that, I don't know, beige even allows you to buy extra spies as well, much like how it will soon allow you to buy extra normal units. So
Yeah,
Well,
I think you do that, but I also think you should increase the rebuy. 20 days to full max is weird when the military system is 5 days.
yeah.
no, I agree. You should be able to get back within, I would say at least 5 days. So
I think 10 a day makes sense with the project, to be honest.
Well, to shift back to the changes that are now being implemented and to respond to Mega. Actually, Mega, I think you're wrong. I think people really
Yeah,
that don't run alliances really underestimate how fucking little aluminum is spent during wars. In
well,
fact, the
I
reason that we have like the reason that most of project costs are tied into aluminum is specifically because we don't use aluminum for fucking anything else. Like you use so little aluminum during wars that you have to tack on aluminum to every other cost like projects and other shit. So planes definitely need to be
so
more expensive.
just to add on to that, I had Borg run how much aluminium was used in the last global just for planes, not for nukes and other things. And it tallied up for the entire global to be 11 million aluminium, which,
Which is nothing.
to be frank,
exactly.
most majors could probably fund an entire global war for both sides quite easily.
I mean, you're
That's the
correct,
point we're
Mbaku.
at.
Which the problem though is that's part of the meta that is developed around the mechanics. That's the optimal way. Like it's more optimal not to rebuy and fight. So
You're also forgetting,
some of
obviously,
these
the new
other changes
military
might.
research allows you to once again make those planes much cheaper again. So, as much as I get, a lot of people are like, no, we'll just go with increasing the cap. Obviously, making them more expensive does have the added perk of people might actually look into reducing the cost side of planes instead. So there was also that balancing option as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the amount of aluminum that gets spent compared to steel is fucking laughable. You said 11 million aluminum. I'm pretty sure just EVH spent like 11 million steel last one.
Yeah,
So it's like
so
crazy.
I think the more logical solution would be to just drop the amount of aluminium people make. But I can tell you now, every time I try and drop the production side, it gets hated on. So
Nah, you shouldn't.
unfortunately, the solution is to just increase consumption.
To respond to Henry, yes, but at the same time, like it's still really a small amount. 11 million for planes is nothing.
Yeah.
Like that's
Like
and the
you
total.
can even look at the graph of the total amount. You can barely
Yeah,
see where the global
I'll
happened,
pull.
but
I'll pull it up
barely.
now. I'll pull it up
You can't,
now
which is not
on.
the case with any other resource in this game. You can actually see a dip from globals. That one, you can barely see anything because people obviously still produce during wars as well. So
Yeah,
if you
part of
book
it.
11 million aluminium, there's probably a production of probably at least 5 or 6 in that time
Part
frame
of
as
it
well.
also is that people spend the aluminium on the planes before the war, and then they don't rebuy. So like you don't
True.
usually rebuy planes outside of
Well,
the first
you do
round.
if
Really.
you're winning, but yeah.
Yeah. But we got the stats. Let me look at
There was obviously an increase
consumption.
slightly to missiles and aluminium and nukes and aluminium as well, which was based on the other thread about whether they had become too cheap and OP compared to trying to fight conventionally. So nukes and missiles are more expensive to try and get people to go back towards more conventional fighting. Whether that will have the effect, I'm not sure. Obviously, the base changes is also another encouragement as well to try and get people to go back to fighting conventionally. I don't believe either of these things is going to be enough to see that meta shift, but I don't want to obviously break the meta so much by shifting it too far, and we just have endless amount of people building up all the time either. So
Well, I don't think that won't
I'll
happen.
probably keep.
That would
I
that would
think
take
I just
some
need to keep
drastic change.
nudging it. Probably.
The problem with building up is fucking steel. Like the problem building up is just fucking affording steel is way too fucking hard. It's too fucking expensive. And the reason people don't this is what I really liked in the change is that you're actually I don't know if I'm wrong, but I think you're reducing the cost of steel for ships, right?
No, ships did not change in steel costs. They changed in consumption, so they
Did they
use
change
less gas.
in cash price?
They cost less to upkeep.
Oh.
So there is
Yeah.
no actual. I will say the military research there is a lot more reduction in costs for them in that military
Right.
research side of things.
Well, I think there should also be a base, probably a base slash. The problem with ships is people like literally just don't build them because of the steel cost. Currently, if you build max ships and max tanks is the same amount of steel.
Well, I think they do it. The main reason they don't do it is because they're useless. If they were actually super useful and you needed ships, everyone will build ships all the time. Like if you 100% every single situation, like if they were like planes, like you could make planes 5 times more expensive and people would still max out planes. So
Well, it's
it's less the cost and more the effectiveness of the unit, I think.
I'm pretty sure it's a little bit of both.
Yeah,
Definitely
but
the costs.
max ships aren't needed, Benzene.
Yeah, obviously we got the ship changes to what they're actually going to do. Having no ships, I think, is obviously not going to be a meta anymore. Or even having a low amount of ships, but having necessarily more than your opponent might not be the big big go-to. Ships will be much more annoying than they used to be.
Well, I think there was some sentiment in people wanting to have ships have their own superiority, or be able to remove like another superiority,
Well,
like air superiority or ground control.
which is what they will do in the future, ideally now. That's the suggestion we popped up, that they can remove superiorities. Ships obviously already have blockades as well, so
Yeah, well, blockades aren't very fucking useful at war, in actual war. But what do you think the sentiment is on the ship changes regarding ships removing superiorities?
I think it will be better in terms of if you need to draw out your wall to potentially get someone else to counter in, and you just need to stay afloat for a lot longer. I think that is going to be the ideal time to start using ships, because obviously you start taking away superiorities. It's going to take a lot longer to actually take you down than it does at the moment. But I don't think you'll win a war by using ships at this point, which is fine. I still think at the end of the day, planes are the metric in which you pretty much measure whether you're going to win or lose a war. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but yeah, obviously ground got its buff go now, which makes them far more powerful. I just feel like ships has been left so far behind, it's not even really funny at this point. The only purpose to ships at this point is to stop you having all your infra shredded. If you're in a winning war, otherwise, what is the actual point of having ships? They're expensive. They're expensive to use. Yeah, I don't actually see a point in the current meta of having ships.
Yeah,
And most
I
people
agree.
don't bother maxing them out. They just buy enough so that generally they can kill or
Yeah, the
stave
enemy
off
ships, and
whatever
then
enemy
yeah,
ships.
exactly. Yeah, you usually delete down if you have so that you can declare further down.
Yeah.
Though Prefontaine brings up a question which I actually think is a good one, which is if everyone's maxed ships all the time, the score is going to be inflated, and that could impact down declare strength.
Potentially, yeah, but I
You
mean,
may need to look at like score tweaks as a result of that.
We might have to revert some of the city score tweaks, or yeah, there might have to be some sort of score tweak there. Obviously, the city score went back up to get rid of some of the ridiculous down declares that we were seeing, and it more or less did work. So potentially we might have to shift back because people will be at max units.
Are there any changes to the up declare ranges in this update? I
There is
can't
not.
remember.
The community said no. I did
All
obviously
right.
put a few different scales there. You know, do we slightly pare it back? Do we completely go back? So yeah, from what I gather, it was pretty much remained the same. So,
I love this community.
Was it
so
though? I don't know.
that is where we're going to.
I didn't
see
even
it
see that word.
fall down. Whether obviously with further score tweaks, whether we'll need to actually tweak that again will be probably that question. But yeah, just remove score.
Well, I do want to talk about I guess, while we're on the topic, I do want to talk about the war ranges. That's probably one of the worst fucking changes we've had in a very, very long time. It was extremely bad. Like, it completely changed the meta of how global wars are fought. It's made wars a lot more costly. So, like, here's a good example. I keep bringing it up, right? When Eclipse fought House, right? And it was a very even war. Now we can debate in terms of tiering or whatever the fuck, but in terms of sides, they were pretty evenly matched in score, the amount of resources they both had, the amount of infra they both had, right? And so what happened is Eclipse went in for an even war and they got hella punished. Like, they basically took just as much damage as House did, which basically like disincentivized them from having even wars. And we saw in the last war that we had that because it was such a fucking dog pile, a lot of sides on the winning side didn't take a lot of damage. So I think everyone's getting the clear meta now. If you go evenly on somebody, you will get fucking trashed. Like you'll be a winner in name, but you will take just as much damage as the people you're beating. So there's really no incentive in taking in taking like the initiative to start a war, because you get punished for doing that. Really, right now you get rewarded most for just watching people fight. And so I feel
Yeah,
like
well, how it used to be is that the whole point of the whole strategy of the fight was that you would try to capture the upper tier. The goal was to capture the upper tier and to create a safe zone at a certain score range, and then a buffer zone where you could drop in and down declare, and then both one side will be trying to push up, and the other side will be pushing down, and that made wars more interesting. Frankly, it made it more engaging. It wasn't just again, when you have dog piles and other things, it's still the same problem, but now there's no safe zone. Well, no, it was all. I'm not talking about strategy. I'm just talking about how wars would play out. That was always the case. It was always the case that the whole idea was to capture the upper tier and secure it so that you would have space above that was not in danger. But now C20s can like up declare on like a C45 and nuke them. And it's as we saw last war with Eclipse, they got absolutely torched. They took like $200 billion in damages despite winning the war, and
yeah,
reasonably handily too. And
they
it's
got cooked.
yeah, exactly. And it's the problem is it's all well and good to say, well, people should play differently, but that's not how people think. You have to the mechanics need to incentivize the behavior. Is the reality.
Exactly.
And
Yes.
the up declare ranges incentivize people to farm. So all the people complaining about how slow the game is and how it's all farming now, if you support the up declare ranges, you're supporting that. You're contributing to that because that's exactly what's going to happen. Like, there's going to be more dog piles as a result because fighting even wars is more punished, and there's going to be less wars because people are going to want to be less proactive in going on the offensive because it's economically bad. Which the economic matter as it is right now is already completely fucked, and there's a lot of reasons why that's the case. But this is a huge problem, and I don't know. I'd be putting it back to a vote again, honestly. I
And
don't know.
and for all the people that are saying like, well, whales need to get punished, and that's why we have the update. Well, here's the problem, right? Because of the way the meta is right now, is what's happening is we're not even seeing wars, and whales are just sitting out and farming for like 6, 8 months, 10 months, and they're not even fighting wars, and they're incentivized just not to be on the attack, and not to start beef, and to just fucking watch the game progress. So what's happening is you don't even have a chance to fight them and like set them back anymore. Like at least if there's wars happening frequently, even if one of the sides gets to farm during the war, that's fucking nothing compared to like what we have right now, where both Grumpy and Eclipse just get to fucking just grow in during peace. I really don't see any benefit in the war range update. I don't understand why we even passed it. It was
Yeah,
like
because the issue is it only benefits you in a losing situation, but people still don't want to lose. So no one's going to go out and try and like up declare hard on Grumpy in like a war like Eclipse because you're going to lose in that scenario, right?
yeah, yeah. Well,
You
it,
want to
it, it, it
win.
doesn't make losing hurt any less. You still take the fucking same amount of damage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But they also take more damage, which then incentivizes the war to go longer,
Exactly. Yes.
which then does more damage. And then again, people adjust their behavior to the mechanics. You have to we the mechanics should be incentivizing whales to be aggressive so that they fight more, so that they don't grow as much. Is a reality. They
Yeah.
should be incentivized to go on the front foot because if they don't, they'll be disadvantaged. But that's not the case right now. This change dramatically benefits whales at the expense of everyone else. And it's just a great example of how people don't seem to understand the impact, the indirect impacts of these suggestions.
No, yeah, I don't know. I think it's fucking tragic. Like it's probably what the biggest problem we have right now.
My personal preference was to take it back down to 2 times score, which is slightly higher than what it was, but not obviously 2.5 times score, which is what it currently is. But yeah, the current voices in the community are obviously pretty against any change at the moment. So, let me know if you manage to sway public opinion in the meantime.
No, I'm not free. Why do you ask?
Also, to reply to Pre, he said that the number one counterpoint having a war system where the side Blitz has a chance to rally after the opening round was that players didn't want to lose the Blitz advantage. Well, here's the thing, right? You also need to, like, this is what I said previously about you need to allow people to win and give rewards to coalitions that win. Because then you give people like incentive to want to start wars, right? And if you have it be in a sense where like each war is gonna drag out and it's gonna have two sides fighting each other in like multiple rounds, that's also a problem. Like I understand it's sort of like a toxic mindset to have. I think the first thing we need to fix is the optic clear ranges. Only after you fix the optic clear ranges, you can start thinking about people coming back in a losing fight.
I'm just very opinionated, Pre. Which you would already know that, I think.
He doesn't need to be on the dev team. He just
I don't. Yeah, I just bitch all the time. It's better now, I guess. But I mean, Alex has always been the problem with design. So I like the recent changes, but at the end of the day, I mean, I know who to point the finger at.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, what are some of the other changes, KEEGOZ, you think that, and I guess let's get you too, that we should be focusing on?
Well, I suppose you could talk about the beige changes because that kind of ties into what we've been
All right.
talking about.
What are the beige? I didn't even look at that part of the post.
Well, it's right at the bottom. So when you're in beige and have no wars, so you can't be in beige and just have other wars. You get an increase to the number of soldiers, tanks, aircraft, and ships that you can recruit per day by 15%, which obviously does also stack with PB as well. So that would take it to 25% from the very base amount that you can buy.
Oh, so it's just like an add-on to PB, so it's another 15. I see.
Yeah, so it wouldn't take as many days to get back to max as it would normally, basically.
Interesting.
So getting back into the war is quicker, and you don't have to rely on lengthy amount of beige time to do so.
I'm going to say something that's very unpopular, but I feel like the whole notion of getting back into the war, I don't know if it's the direction to go with things, because we've seen time and time again that these really long, like as much as like I'm a fucking maniac, I'll fight for 4 months, but we've seen time and time again that these really long, drawn out conflicts don't always do the best for the retention, the community. It makes people less likely to want to fight because they fear having to fight for really long, etc. And I mean, a lot of it is due to the fact that there's no real win condition in war. You can't win in a mechanical sense. You just sort of torch all your enemies' shit until. Sorry, Pre's distracting me. I'll respond to that in a sec, Pre. There's no like end condition to war, and so wars just end up being a fight of willpower a lot of the time, even though one side is usually always clearly losing, and it becomes a drawn out situation. But then on the flip side, you need recourse when someone fucks you. Like, there's a problem with raiding and nuke turreting and all these other issues. Is like, what can you really do to a low infra raider who just comes in, jacks your shit, deposits it in a bank? There's nothing. Like, I suppose you could hit them and mess up their rating, but you're messing yourself up more than you're messing them.
Well, it's just a buzzword.
Well,
It's just one of the things people say. I feel like it's just like the common thing is like everyone thinks they should say or think that, oh yeah, we should make wars. Well, wars would be fair if people could come back and like we had mechanics where people could rebuild military and fight back. And they say shit like, oh yeah, we should encourage rebuying units more. I just feel like those people are fucking out of touch and don't see the fronts. Like the way wars work, actually, like globals, is one side gets the numbers necessary to win, and they hit the other side, and the other side isn't gonna come back. Doesn't matter if they rebuild to fucking max mill again. They still have worse odds. Like they're still fighting at a disadvantage. How the fuck are they gonna come back? It doesn't make any sense.
so it just
never...
becomes mutually assured destruction every time. And this is
You
my
would
point. I
rather
think the way
you would rather lose. Sorry, you would rather lose, right? That war, and then make
and
another
come back.
coalition and come back. Yeah, you would rather do that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's my point. That's the point I'm trying to get at. Is it makes more sense for wars to be winnable, I guess, in the context of the game, and have a fixed end, so that then we don't have these like massively drawn out conflicts, I guess.
I don't think the 15% will feasibly change it that much. I think it'd be nice for people that potentially could get back into the war if it's still not potentially over within the first round, if it's still at a stalemate. Or on the other side, if another group was going to jump in and you'd already been losing, you could quickly rebuild to blitz with them. But I don't think this would necessarily see people constantly rebuild back up to try and fight back for the war. So I think it's just nice that you don't have to have like 6 days of phase to potentially build back up and hit someone.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really specifically critiquing that change. I mean, I generally think it's fine. I'm more wondering if there isn't a way to. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure how you would do it. Like, maybe you have Beige compound at a certain point, and then people are just knocked out of the war. They're eliminated or something. Yeah.
I agree, Pre.
Like, games about playing to be able to win the war before.
That's
yeah, pretty much.
That's basically what I'm saying. And I mean, there's nothing you can do changing the mechanics. I don't know how you would. You would have to change the whole game, really. I don't think there's a way.
I did float the idea of completely deleting the war system and starting again, but
yeah,
that was a firm no from Alex. So this is the war system that we've got, and this is the one we have to work around. So
yeah, and the offensive war limit, and we should delete score. It should just be a free for all. We should just be able to hit anyone we want at any point at any city range. Just
uncap improvements.
Just complete free for all.
Create Castle Camelot, which perpetually slots all of our 40s all the time, so we can hit everything for free.
Honestly, KEEGOZ, you should do that on the test server. We should have like a tournament where there's no limits and anyone can do it. That'd be so fun. I swear. You just imagine being able to hit like 20 people.
True.
And then you could have all your buddies hit the people that hit you, and it would just be chaos. I mean, it'd break the servers, but it'd be pretty funny.
Yeah, it probably would break the server.
It would be so much fun, dude.
Yeah.
We should do that one. Well, fuck it, they're never gonna code that shit. He's fucking hamster.
I'm like half joking.
He has a fucking steam engine from like 1844 running the servers. It's just not gonna work.
Yeah.
So I suppose the last update is the actual military research one.
Yeah, well,
we talked about
military. Oh yeah.
Here's where I bring up city caps.
Yeah,
he's going to take the discussion completely off. the topic.
No.
but
It's all tied together. So
all right.
once
Should
the
we discuss the
military,
change before we move to that?
fine. Okay, we'll discuss the change before I shield city caps. Go ahead.
So obviously, I guess this. I mean, people compare it to perks, and I guess it is kind of similar to perks. There is an upgrade, and you do need to choose a path. The added bonus to this compared to perks, though, is that it is much easier to actually balance for starters.
And it's not insane.
Yeah, it's not
No-
just every single brain fart idea just being shoved into one big thing that we were working on, which I had no idea how that was ever going to be balanced, and I don't think anyone actually did, which is why I never went anywhere. But anyway, basically you can upgrade between planes, ground, or navy, and there's basically two paths that you can go down. You can either increase the cap that you have on these units, or you can reduce the upkeep cost to the units as well. Obviously, and you can mix between the two as well. With every upgrade, obviously getting more and more expensive each time, so you do kind of have to think about where you're going to put your money and resources in to buy these upgrades.
Yeah, so I've looked at the numbers, and it looks like the cap upgrades max out at 4 cities worth of units. So
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
a game breaking. I mean,
No,
although I assume you could expand this at any point later on if needed.
you could. And obviously, if we do other tweaks to other units, whether that be, I don't know, missiles and nukes get changed or spies, you could probably add a whole new path as well. You could add some more flavor to those units. I don't know. Yeah, obviously, the idea of this is to potentially be expanded on in the future. Set up. But currently, as it is more of I suppose, a mid to late game sort of area that I would expect players to actually utilize it, because I don't know why necessarily you would be getting it in the early game when you can just get 4 cities much cheaper than the upgrade costs. But I'm sure some lower tiered people will probably go for it. Put it this way, it is more powerful in some ways to use it in the lower tier, but
so there's a project tied to it. Is there a city restriction on that? I can't remember.
Not currently.
There should be. Maybe that resolves the issue. If you just put a city 20 restriction on the project.
Currently, the only restriction is that obviously you need to have that project, and you do need the propaganda bureau as well. So
I think you just let it just be free. Just let anyone buy it. I don't think it matters.
it does cost 50 mil plus 10,000 of every refined as well. So it's not a cheap thing necessarily on its own for smaller players.
Right.
The slots
that makes
isn't
sense.
obviously much of an issue because it does increase project slots.
Well, I'm gonna fucking fire the shot now and switch the topic, then respond to Stanko. I'm gonna take the initiative. Fuck you, Sketch. Yeah, the problem is, Stanko, we don't need more metropolitan planning projects. What we actually need is to delete
Get rid of them.
Is to get rid of all of them and just actually make the cities cheaper. That's really what you need to do. Because this is the problem with the projects, right? Is say you're just say we're not on we're playing a nation simulator, you're just one guy, right? You're in a 0-0 alliance, right? To keep things fair. You reach C11 and then what? You have to wait, you have to save up the money to buy the project, and then you have to wait 5 cities for it to ROI. So really, for that amount of time, it hasn't sped up your progress at all. Really, who it actually speeds up progress for is people that are already fucking C30, right? Because they don't give a fuck. They're just gonna buy it outright. And then you have to get and then you get C16 and you have to wait for AUP. And then you get to C21 and then you have to wait for metropolitan planning. So really what the projects do is they actually just slow you down. It doesn't help you at all.
And the important part to note, they have a 3 city ROI now, which is the difference. But that's still you have to front. It's basically you're front loading the investment. But the issue is this isn't. It isn't even an economic issue. The issue is now, in order to get into the game from a military perspective, you need to be like C25 at least C25. It's probably a lot higher for most majors. It's a lot higher, but like the very minimum city count, you really need to be in a relevance hearing. The very minimum is at least like C25. And by adding all these roadblocks, you're just lengthening out the time it's going to take to get to C25 and all these other issues. And it's just, it's not, it's you can see like where the game stagnates. You can see the charts and see where people are bunched at, and you can tell like it slows down things dramatically. And it's like
If you just deleted them,
a long,
people could
a
just
long
insta
time
boost
ago.
to C20. Like they wouldn't have to wait at C11 at all.
Yes, exactly. You could immediately take someone to C20 because now there's no cap to C20. But now you have to do that. You have to, because you're still beholden to the project timers now, right? Because the project timers aren't gone up to C20. So now you have to buy someone to 11, buy them the project, wait 10 days. Yeah, 10 days. Buy them up to C16, buy them the project, and then buy them up to 20. Then you have to wait 10 days to do C21, and then you have to do the
Metropolitan.
other project.
Yeah,
And
it's
that's
fucking crazy.
without including all the other essential projects that they're going to need in that time too. Like most alliances will buy propaganda bureau, they might buy the intelligence agency, they might buy an econ project in that time as well. And this is the issue with adding to so many projects is there's only so many you can buy in so many days, and the more essential low tier projects that we add, the harder it's going to be, the longer it's going to take to get them all.
I think they should remove project timers along where the city timers are.
Yeah. I think that the first 5 or maybe even honestly 10 projects shouldn't have a timer at this point.
Yeah, 100%.
Because
And what I'm thinking,
I do
we even need to
think
move where the city timers are. I think we should move them to fucking 25 at this point. The reset.
I do think if you were going to remove the urban planning projects, I think the more logical thing would be to inbuild those discounts into finishing the tutorial and be like, okay, once you finish the tutorial, you get, those costs off your
True.
cities.
That's not a bad idea.
Because that means they actually have to interact. They actually have to understand the game before they actually then move.
Join
get a bonus.
an alliance. Join a top 50 alliance. You get minus what is it?
this guy. I agree, but I don't think that's gonna.
I do believe part of the tutorial is actually joining an alliance.
Yeah.
It's been a while. I haven't done this tutorial for a while.
Yeah, but it's join fucking NATO cuckboy alliance at fucking top 288.
Yeah. I mean, you can't necessarily discriminate against smaller alliances.
Yeah, I mean, I think you should, but I understand that you can't.
Yeah, I'm fucking.
I mean, I can put in there as much as possible to highly encourage them to join a more experienced alliance before. I think the bigger problem is people join the game and make their own alliance, even though they don't have any clue what the game really is.
Yeah.
I think that's
well, I think you should lock out making alliances for people below C20, at least C20,
or give it a seniority timer. Give it like
6 months or something. I think that makes more sense. Yeah,
I don't, because I think if someone isn't smart enough to build the C20, they probably shouldn't have. They shouldn't be building an alliance. So I actually don't think that's.
If you make it a double tick box, you need to have played for 6 months and also be
C20. Okay, that's better. But I don't think it should just be seniority, because if a guy can't grow to C20 in 6 months, maybe he doesn't. Maybe he shouldn't have alliance.
Well, maybe he was saving for urban planning and advanced urban planning.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
That's true. Yes. Well, see, Stanko, you wouldn't have the discount. You would just make the cities cost cheaper, like up to 21 or whatever. Like you would just.
We've done that before. Back in the IQ days, they made the cities cheaper.
Yes.
And that was the right move at the time. And honestly, we're overdue a city cheapening at this point.
Yeah.
Which kind of circles back to what I was talking about before with the military research proposals, which I was interrupted. You didn't let me go on my tangent, but I'll go on it now. I think the reason that stuff like that's a good idea is we need more ways to invest money and different avenues to grow the nations, because we need a city cap. We need some sort of upper limit on cities, because it's getting too crazy at this point. And
Well, people
we
are reaching like 8 billion for the next city, and I'm like,
yeah, but it's not
this is not
slowing it down.
sustainable.
But it is.
I actually did the
Yeah,
math. I actually did
yeah.
the math. I can probably get a chart for it where actually the way city costs were designed, right? Whenever the game was designed, we all think this way, right? We all think, okay, so city costs get exponentially more expensive, which means it takes exponentially more time between each city, right? But that's not true. The actual increase in cost is linear. So like, okay, just as an example, right? The average like C30 will take almost the same amount of time to buy their next city as a C45. The exact same time. There's no difference. And the difference between like a C30 and C60 is way shorter than you think. Like a C60 will buy like their next city at a comparable like speed as like a C40. Like there's very little difference. So and the reason for that is we've stacked up all these fucking projects onto the whales, and they build super high infra, and even though their city costs are going up, their revenue is as well, and it's matching the costs. So they just keep growing fucking forever. Like you can never stop them. Like the way we're going, we're gonna like people think it's gonna take forever for someone to reach like C70. No, it'll be like really soon. Like pretty much beginning of next year, you'll see like Fenris will be pretty much C7, and he'll just keep going. He'll get to C100 like no problem. Like he'll never slow down pretty much.
Yeah. Well, the main problem to that is sure you hard cap cities, but then we don't necessarily have anything else for them to do.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean.
We're
That's
saying
why the
beginning of next
military.
year, even
Yeah.
with the military research, like they won't have anything to do potentially for 3 to
Well,
6 months.
I
And then
don't know.
they will I don't know how long it would take them to like obviously buy out that military research, but we probably won't have something to replace that by the time that they do that as well. So
I agree, but here's my counter argument. That's a very, very small, tiny percentage of the overall player base, and it's more advantageous to the whole player base that because here's the issue: the longer we wait, the harder it's going to be to do this, because once people start hitting C70, that's like right now. There's what, like 5 people above C60. How many people are above C60? Not many. Right? It's like 5
it's
maybe.
slowly it's
2.
creeping. It's
Apparently,
creeping.
it's 2. All right, I'll
Okay.
take Dark Blake's number.
Anyway, I should probably post the data for that. Let me actually find it.
The data, but the longer we wait, the more people will go over 60, and not only that, but the longer we wait, eventually we're going to have to make the cap 70, and at a certain point, it's going to just be too high. Like the gap between when someone joins the game, they join at C1, and then they have to build slowly and slowly. We're gonna be playing two. We already are playing 2 different games at this point. Like the new players used to join the game, and within a couple of months they were in the game. I remember when I joined, I fought my first global war, and I was C6, and that was like semi-relevant to the war. Like, and now you can join and you can spend a year playing the game and still not, depending on how well an alliance grows, you could still not be relevant. And the problem is that's only going to become a bigger and bigger issue the longer and longer this goes on, and it's not slowing down. Like it's getting, if anything, it's speeding up, because we have all of these raiders injecting money into the economy that they weren't before, and now alliances are trickling their money up instead of down, because they
We're
just
also
have
having
new players
longer peace
longer
periods
peace
as
periods,
well.
and that's impacted by the meta of all the other things we've discussed earlier. And like, at a certain point, it's gonna get to a point where this is a problem that we can't fix, but without pissing off a huge amount of players.
Would
So
the more logical thing to do is at a certain point, obviously we talked about the cost being linear, is to actually make it exponential at a certain point rather than go, nah, once you hit C70, that's it, you can't ever buy a city again.
Well, that's
yeah, I mean,
that's what I
I think me and Trip disagree on this because he agrees with you that there should be a soft cap, but I think the issue is if you don't have a hard cap, it's still going to be a problem. You're kicking the can down the road of it because 60 is too high already. Is the reality. Like we should have had a cap when the game was back like years ago. There should have been a cap at 50 or 40.
I
It's too.
think 50 probably would have been the ideal, but
Yeah,
we're well beyond
it's
probably.
it's
Like if you look
too
at
late
how many
now.
people are over 50 or sitting at 50 now, that I think we're up
Yeah,
to about 50 people currently, and I mean probably by next month would be up to like 70. So
yeah, and so it's like it's a problem that needs to be addressed sooner than later because the later you address the issue, the more damage it's going to do, the more people are going to be pissed off, or the more you're going to have to compromise. And like a C70 cap is even worse. Like it's not good, and a soft cap doesn't actually address the issue because either you're going to make the soft cap super steep, in which case people may as well have a hard cap because it's so steep that they can barely bypass C60 anyway and have to wait months and months and months and potentially years. Yeah, well, the way you resolve that Darkblade is you have to introduce separate mechanics. I mean, I agree that it's kind of a problem because the dev team is so slow and it's hard to get these changes implemented. But one is a problem that needs to be fixed now, and one is a problem that can be fixed later. Most players aren't at C60 yet. That will only become a problem once people start to get to C60 in large numbers. And until that happens, you've got time.
to be
But if
strictly fair
you
as
wait,
well, like these people, although yes, they can no longer invest in themselves. In theory, they could invest into their alliance of all the people
correct,
that
yeah.
aren't at C60. But yeah, obviously the preferred thing would be to actually give them other shit to invest in. The main hang up here is the fact that we have not ever successfully put any of those mechanics into the game at any point during
Yeah.
the over 10 years this game has existed. So I would get, like, in my mind, once the military research thing is out, making that argument would be easier than doing it now because people would rightly
Right.
point out the fact that, what are we supposed to invest in, and pointing
I
at something
agree.
potentially in the future probably is not going to be enough for them to be satisfied.
I agree. I understand your point. The issue is this: it is a time sensitive thing. The longer you wait, the more this is going to be a problem. And it's going to be a problem very quickly. It's getting worse. I mean, the wealth in the game is escalating. It's getting like faster. We're speeding up. We're not slowing down. It's not like, which is the opposite of what it should be. But like people are
yeah,
growing even faster.
and
I think
people are
inevitably this would need to be a game discussion though, and whether that, again, I think even the fact whether you have a soft cap or a hard cap would need to be a discussion to
I
be had.
think. Well, the thing with Sketchy is you think I disagree with you. Actually, where I am is I'm like, I just don't know. I think is the more correct thing because the thing
Well,
is,
I'm confident in my
well,
opinion.
well,
We'll put it this way: if you
here's
soft cap at C60, it does at least kick it down the road to where you could hard cap later.
I mean, again, yeah, you could. The issue is then you have to make a decision between
Like I could straight
making the
up say
cap
right now,
70.
C60 is going to have the soft cap. Or you could even do C50. You're going to annoy a hell of a lot more people, but at least, I mean, the benefit to the people above C50 then will be the fact that, hey, you already got a benefit because you don't have to pay the extra costs that everyone else behind you will now have to pay. So
Yeah, well,
you
I don't
could
know.
soft
I
cap
mean,
at 50.
that is, I mean, you'd probably, if you were going to do a soft cap like that, it'd make more sense to start increasing costs at like 45 or something. I don't know, but the issue is if you wait, people are going to build over C60, and if they keep building over C60, eventually the cap's going to have to be 70, and 70.
I mean,
60
the
60 is too much.
alternative thing here is also
70 is
one
too much.
soft capping at, I don't know, 50 and saying, just FYI, we potentially might reset you all back down to 50 at some point in the future.
That'll piss people off, and you'll lose players. I think is the issue.
I think we'll lose. I think, to be honest, regardless of what change you make around this, someone's going to leave.
Yeah, one or two people, but
that's the
more
basic.
people. Yeah. I think more people are going to be impacted and affected by having their cities deleted than people who aren't even yet at C60, knowing in the future that they might not have something to buy once they hit C60. I think one's worse than the other, personally.
Well, here's what I think. I think whether you go for hard cap or soft cap, they essentially do the same shit. They basically cap the last city where people can go. Because even with a soft cap, eventually, the way I modeled it, like, once people reach a C70, it costs like 800 days to buy a city, which is fucking
exactly,
insane.
yeah. And so
it's not gonna happen.
Either way, you need
shit,
to eventually implement. Yeah, which is why I think a hard cap's better, because at least then it's set in stone. This is where the highest you can go. The other idea that I had
with Trip's idea of soft capping is if it takes that long to buy C70, we might actually have enough mechanics out by the time anyone even hits it to then be also actually know that's also going to be the hard cap at the same time.
Right, but then we're going to have to speed up the load.
Is like 3 years. Like we would have enough time to probably have at least 3 or 4 updates.
All right. Well, my counter proposal then is at that point you're going to have to make it faster for new nations to grow, counteract that, because 70 is a larger gap from 1 than 60 years, obviously.
But I'll also point out it's probably a more positive move. I think that would be an easier move to implement than hard capping.
Right. Well, whether it's a soft cap or a hard cap, I think the more important thing is that it's done sooner rather than later, personally.
Yeah, I don't know how hard it would be to code in. I think you'd have.
It wouldn't be that hard, surely. They would just adjust the formula
just
of
lock
cities.
it. Just lock it. Can't you just delete the fucking thing after you reach C80? The button is just gone.
Oh yeah, but a hard cap would be super
hard cap
easy,
is very easy. The soft cap, like when you'd have to move from one, obviously, calculation to a new one. And
you would just make a new calculation.
Where that is.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I don't know how hard it is. It might be easier.
That wouldn't be difficult, I don't think.
I mean, I could tell you the really, really easy thing to do here. Introduce a project that costs a shit ton to buy before you can buy the next lot of cities, and then do it again, and then do it again.
Oh, I hate you so much. Yeah. All right, it's yeah, it's the ultra mega advanced urban planning. It makes every city.
It just allows you to buy the next couple of cities.
Yeah.
It
makes every city 1 billion cheaper.
Let's say we make the hard cap C60, right? And then you have to spend like 15 billion to unlock the next 5 cities. It's probably actually not even enough. You probably have to make it like something ridiculous, like 30 billion or something.
Well, the other way to tackle
that is probably an easier way though to implement it. I will just say, like, if you wanted it done quickly, that would probably be an easier way.
The only way to fix it after that would be to reduce the military cap in every city. Basically, compress the game again.
True.
That would be the only other way to do it.
Well, the problem we have right now is currently our fucking solution to having people catch up is we fucking just remove the timers. That's the only thing we can really do currently is remove the timers and have people catch up. And I feel like we have a few options. So that's the first option, right? The other option is we can literally compress the cities. So the people that have an advantage that are at C60 still have an advantage, but you compress everyone's cities back. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You can do that, and you know, theoretically, people that are ahead are still ahead, but then you just compress the game back pretty much. So like a C40 will be a C20, a C60 will be like a, I don't fucking know, like a C30 or something like that.
So, in other words, actually delete cities, but deletes equally everyone's cities.
Equally, well, that would pretty much leave you how you would balance it. You would sort of leave yourself with the same amount of advantages you had before. So absolutely, like nothing would change. We would basically just go back in time. That's the other solution. And then the third solution is to just have a hard cap or a soft cap, which, you know, it ends up being the same shit. And then the only problem with that, in my opinion, is that this is what I said to Sketchy as well. Is what happens is everyone's gonna reach that at some point, and then everyone's gonna be at the same tier.
Yep.
And that's just and then we just have a new problem. So I don't know.
Yeah,
that's
Well,
why
I mean,
the solution would be
well,
to be able to invest in
then
other things, but obviously
I think
that takes time.
I would counter with something. I mean, Baku said something earlier, which I think is correct, which is that once you've implemented a hard cap, you can always move the hard cap later if you need to. Which would be a lot better than having no hard cap and just making it insanely exponentially expensive. Like you could implement the hard cap, and then once you've put in mechanics to help people grow past a certain point earlier on in the system, because what we really need is we right now we have a situation where there's really two separate games being played. There's the 30 to 60s range, and then there's the 1 to 30 range, and they're like two completely different things. And anybody who wants to play the major game has to get up to like a C25, C30 to even start playing. And so speeding that up somehow, but then that creates a problem of, okay, if you speed it up, a bunch of new people are going to join. That's going to further inflate the economy, and then more people are going to grow even faster. So it's
Who will hit the cap sooner? Who will then have to have more stuff again implemented so that they can actually invest in something. Yeah, we're at a tricky. We're at a part of the game where obviously Alex never envisioned this game to be around in 10 years' time. That is the that is the main problem we're currently sitting at. This game was not designed to go for 10 years. It was. I think I remember talking to Alex. I think he said he never really thought people would go very far past C30. And I think that holds up because the game started to really start to break quite significantly balance-wise and whatnot once we started to get past C30. That's when we had down declare issues. That's when we had, a lot of different issues starting to crop up that we've been trying to, I guess, band-aid over for a while now. And the band-aids aren't working at this point, I don't think, either.
Essentially, you just get cooked. Like if
But I do think like if this was something that was going to happen, I think you would need a thread on the forums. You would need to go, okay, you'd have to you'd have to go, this is happening. Because if you give an option, soft cap, hard cap, no cap, I know which one's already going to win from the offset. You would have to go, this is happening. These are two different ways we could go about it. Discuss and, kind of give an indicator of which way you'd prefer this to go. Would you prefer the soft cap or would you prefer the hard cap? And obviously some of the positives to one changing it and some of the drawbacks of each different change between a hard and a soft cap.
Well, I think that's a discussion that that should be opened personally, because again, it's an issue that's gonna. I don't know where the game is on it. I've talked to a lot of people, and many people that I've talked to are in favor of caps of some kind, but I don't know if that's true universally. It'd be interesting to see at the very least.
We could see easily, as always with all game mechanics, we could see it run down, political lines. I imagine Grumpy and Eclipse and would potentially have very different opinions to some of the rest of us. Obviously,
Right.
them being the ones that would mostly have to interact with those mechanics.
Well, I think I don't know. I'm thinking from their perspective. I don't know. It's kind of
Grumpy will definitely oppose it.
well, it would kill Grumpy. It would like essentially disband their alliance.
Grumpy's strategy's already dead. Is the thing.
Well, they don't
Yeah,
know that.
I was just looking at all those, like all the people that this would affect. Like, it's not really Grumpy. Like Grumpy has a couple of people. It would be majority would be Eclipse by far, and then Guardian would actually be coming in second, and Arkham. Grumpy on this list is kind of at around C50. So if we were talking C60, they've still probably got a year before it becomes a problem for them. If that, it might be more than a year for some of them to get 8 cities.
But yeah, but I was
so
saying
yeah,
about compressing city counts. I think the reality is it's really just a matter of time to where we have to do that. Honestly, like eventually we'll have to
probably.
compress it.
I think that would be something to discuss once we actually have, the mechanics there to support those changes.
Because the current solution, which is the highway of removing timers and just having people insta buy, that'll run out of road eventually because
Well,
because
yeah,
cost.
because
because
the
of
Yeah.
the
costs.
cap at a certain point, is not time. It is
I
actually
think
cost.
I think it already has. I don't even think it's the case with City 20 because I think there are a lot. I think it's very unlikely you're going to want to just.
Well,
'Cause
we don't see a lot of
there's an
just
element of
massive
risk.
walls of C20s around. Obviously, at one point we saw tons of like C11s walls
Yeah.
sitting there, but I don't think that's the case for C20s. I don't go
Yeah,
around
because
looking
it's
at
still
a
a
line.
lot of
Oh, look
money.
at all these people at C20. It is a lot
You'd
of money.
have
It's a lot of
to.
investment, and normally a lot of people do get them the city projects as well at the same time. So
Yeah, which is
you
why I
you want
think
to be more
removing them and
careful
making it
with
cheaper
this
is
investment.
the best approach.
But yeah, I do. I don't know. Don't know about the city caps. At the end of the day, it really is a argument and battle to be had with the entire community.
Well, I think it's worth seeing what the community actually thinks because we don't really know how
Because
difficult
obviously
it's
trying
going
to.
to do it.
And the only other way you could force it through is for Alex to agree and straight up do it, regardless of public sentiment.
Because
Yeah.
the thing is,
We've
it
been
doesn't.
there before.
It doesn't.
Conversely, he could also go the opposite way and overrule whatever we do. So
The thing is, it doesn't take a lot of data to show. Like, okay, a person that's C30 right now and a person that's C40 right now. If we take the two of them, you would think because of exponential city costs. I mean, we all assume this, just I don't know. It's not factual, but we assume this, right? That the C30 eventually will come close or be able to catch up to a C40. He will never catch up, ever. There will always be a gap. In fact, the 10 city gap between them is likely to never shrink. In fact, when the C30 reaches C40, the C40 will probably be C50. Like the growth is so linear that there's like no exponentiality at all. Like the people that are currently behind will never catch up. Like ever. A C20 currently will never be in the main tiering. Never. Unless they get like
wow.
giga boosted.
The only way is to obviously avoid the fight whilst they're fighting. That's the only, which is now what everyone is trying to do. Everyone's trying to
Yeah,
avoid
well,
the
the
fight.
other way used to be also
So
roll
it is
people.
negatively impacting politics at the same time.
Yeah, well, the thing is, the other solution used to be, well, if you attack someone and roll them, you get an advantage over them. But now you don't because of the up declare ranges, which is where we're back to again. It's like there's always
I do
stupid
think
changes.
making nukes and missiles obviously that little bit more expensive does mean that they, at a certain point, that nuking and missiling is more expensive than the infra you're blowing up. So,
Yeah, but what else can you do? Is the thing.
true. I mean, it's definitely an inconvenience, but
And the point
I do think
that's
people
the
won't.
case.
A lot of people are very obsessed with their net damage, and I think if you start nuking people at, I don't know, like 2k infra, and you start losing net, they might stop.
Yeah, but I mean,
You
2k
never know.
net's pennies compared to the top level infra, which is the whole the whole idea before is that you carve out a safe spot and then you push down to
You do
secure
still
it.
actually earn income though at 2k infra compared to
Of
probably
course,
your
yeah. I
enemy
mean, you're
earning
winning is
nothing.
still better. That's like the only advantage of winning now is economic income. It's like the income difference because the damage difference is fucked. But even
But
that'll go down more and more and more as the war goes on and on and on.
But then I guess, you know, if everyone's sort of capping at the same city up to clear ranges, you know, nothing really at a certain point, is it? Doesn't matter if everyone's C60 or whatever, then up to clear
Yeah,
range isn't much of a conversation to have anymore.
yeah, but that assumes that there won't be other mechanics that will increase. Like, I mean, the military research proposal is going to increase military, right? So it's going to increase
Yeah.
the total like military score you have anyway. So there are going to be people who have more military units and more score anyway, and you can add other things, but by tying everything to cities, we've got into this issue of just escalating inability to fight other alliances. I don't know what the solution is a lot of the time.
But just on this topic, obviously, I don't necessarily have to fire that community shot. I don't have to post that thread. So if you guys have the data and the solutions or some solutions, by all means.
I see how it is. All right.
I'll
All right,
happily if the thread takes off and gets going and, you know, goes somewhere, I'll happily take it, obviously, to the design team.
See, here's the thing,
Um,
KEEGOZ. Here's
but
the
it
thing,
is
though.
a community discussion at the end of the day.
I have given up on this game. I don't give a fuck what happens anymore. I don't care if it dies. Like I've come to the point where I've like been against so many changes that I've gone through anyway, and I've fought the battle and I fucking
Well,
lost.
then you should love this, because this is a change you want to make, and then it should go through anyway.
It's not gonna go through. Especially if I suggest it, it has more chance of not going through. So yeah, I'm not gonna do it.
I don't know why you think me suggesting it necessarily means it'll go through.
We need like Hatebeat to suggest. Actually, Hatebeat, we need you to suggest it.
Yeah, everyone
We'll pay
reads
you.
the recording,
We-
listens to the
we give-
recording tomorrow. Oh, hate me. Can you suggest a change?
we give Hatebeat like $1 to write the post. Like to actually actually we write the post. She just posts it.
I mean, I can
I'm
definitely
having
make the
deja
post,
vu.
but obviously I don't have all that data and stuff that you guys do. So my argument behind it's going to be a little less. I don't know what
I'm gonna get to
supported.
it. I'll run this out because I have this idea. I just want to show, because I have the numbers, right? I can actually model out how like the game will progress tiering wise going forward based on like current revenue. Like, you know, it's not gonna be 100%
Even
accurate.
if you make a thread outlining that, and then obviously I could potentially make a thread following it up, going, all right, we clearly need to have a discussion or what have you. So
Yeah, because the thing is, the way it's going, like if I actually put it up on like a graph and people saw that the way the tiers are right now, they're gonna keep moving linearly. Like literally, they'll just you take the
yeah,
tiers and
but
you
you could
copy
probably
paste them on the
model
right.
out where we're going to be within, I don't know, a year or
I
two.
will.
You
I
could
will
start
say that
modeling.
the big problem now, though, with the forums is that nothing gets any engagement, like
Yeah,
in the game
that's also
suggestion,
true.
because
It is a
the
problem, and you can just see that obviously from people, you know, even in this chat at the moment, being surprised by the fact that some of these changes have come about, despite the fact there is like multiple posts that have been
well, it's
made
not
about
even
some of
just
these
that.
topics.
I don't just mean your updates. I mean people will make threads wanting things. Like I used to post suggestion threads all the time, but the reason I don't do it anymore is because the design team exists. and it's just simpler for me to like PM you and be like, look, this is a like good idea. You should listen to me, you know, because there's like if everything goes through the design team anyway, and the community doesn't engage with any suggestion threads, they don't respond to them or anything, then making a suggestion thread is like just a complete waste of time.
I have a
You know what I
feeling
mean?
they'll engage with this one.
Maybe, but yeah, I don't know.
I
There's
mean,
a
I
lot-
could put it this way: I put a rating post up, and they engaged with that one. So I
well,
think
true.
if you
But
if
put
you
it
hit a
up,
certain
to be
nerve,
fair. Yeah. Well, I don't know if it'll be a nerve
well,
or not.
yeah,
But
okay. I'm not saying necessarily that your thread will be the thread where the big conversation has, but it's something that I can piggyback off of rather than
right.
if I put it up, I'm going to just go. It is not going to be as nuanced as obviously you guys who have all the data and arguments already. I can obviously push further with it.
He's won the argument. We're gonna give up.
Dude,
I've
I
asked
don't
you
know.
to do work, and that was all it took.
Look, I do
Leave
enough
the-
work around here.
This is the Avengers of saving the game. It'll be this VC.
All right,
But-
I think we're probably good,
Yeah.
close to wrapping
Yeah.
up at this point.
We should go to open mic.
Probably.
Yeah.
You need an outro song as well.
Da 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 da. Go fuck yourself. All right, let's go to the open mic.
All right, show's over.
Show's over. Yeah, you literally like actually
Yes.
you
Yeah, you-
factually
you
joined
missed-
right at the end.
You missed the whole thing, Decker. That is accurate. Yeah.
Bro's an hour and a half late. He's like, did I...
Yeah, I
All
will
right, though.
say
It's all been
Nick-
recorded, so
next time we'll probably move it back to the original time and not like 2 hours after update. And obviously, that
Yeah.
was not an ideal time. But we had a
surprisingly, I would have
a-
actually been here for your normal time anyway. I wasn't expecting to be back so early, so it would have
Well,
worked.
the
but
reason we did that is because we had a government meeting before we did this
Yeah.
show. So
Even
we
made
kicked
that.
this-
Well, we also
Yeah,
announced
yeah,
it like a
good man.
last second. Like I literally announced it like 14 hours ago.
Yeah, I don't know why it
Yeah.
took so long. I might have to do it next time. I was waiting for you to do it, and then you're like, "Oh, are you sure about this time?"
Suck
And I
my
thought,
dick.
I already-
You were,
I
was
already
fucking-
agreed.
No, you fucking didn't. You were fucking dodging
I
me.
was
You
fine with
didn't
it.
answer the question.
That's not true. If I had an
You-
issue with it, I would have said something.
Oh,
Fine.
okay. So I should take your silence as fucking yes. Okay.
Yeah, silence is consent. Trip. That's.
Fine.